What's up, Internet? You're tuning in episode 80 of the Steam Deck Podcast, Flip Screen Games weekly gaming podcast, all about Valve's portable PC powerhouse, the Steam Deck. I'm your host, Pete Bessie, joined as always by my very good friend and co-host, Mr. Steven Radford.
Hello, hello.
Hello, Steve. Welcome back.
Yeah, it's good to be back. It feels like only last week we were talking about our favorite games on the Steam Deck, and we get to talk about them again this week, which is nice.
Yeah, Valve teed us up a nice little topic today because, of course, as of right now, you can go take advantage of the Steam Spring Sale, which we gave you a PSA for last week, and they dropped a fun little page that I thought would be cool to chat about and interact with. They made a new top 100 games played on Steam Deck page, which you can check out over on steampowered.com/sale/deck top 100. We'll have a link to it down below. I would say most of
It's like 90% of them are all on sale, which is just insane to me. But yeah.
yeah, it's like it might even be a little higher than that. It's like basically every game on this list that is not like a brand new game,
Or
or
Elden Ring.
and Dark Souls and Persona
Yeah.
3 are like the
Yeah.
three games that are not brand new that are not on a pretty
Yeah. One of which, Balatro, we spoke about last week. Pete said he was going to play it. Did you play it, Pete?
Okay. So here's the thing. I didn't play it this week,
Okay.
Steve. I didn't play it this week.
There's
But
I'm surprised.
I did. You're messing with me offline before we sat down. I was like, whoa, how do you know I didn't play it? And you're like, you didn't play it, motherfucker. You would have been talking about it if you were playing it. It's like, fair enough. But I will say it's not on sale. I bought it anyway. You know, I had that
Good.
$4 burning a hole in my pocket from when you taught me that I could sell my
To
Steam
sell your
badges.
cards.
So I just was like, there you go, $10. I feel like I got a discount, good enough for me. But and I'll say this, I'm very excited to play it. I'm gonna jump into it this week. Like I said, I kind of have been needing like something lighter, to play in between, the kind of big meaty games I'm chipping away
This is
at.
just going to consume you anyway, so it's lighter, but it will consume you.
And here's the danger of that, Steve. I can't share. I'm playing Redacted. I have a game that I'm playing for review because we're entering that era of our careers, everybody. Okay. I got a hot game in advance. I got 2 weeks to play it before embargo, and it's Redacted. So I will definitely play Balatro, and also I'm a little afraid of it right now because if it does just like consume me, it's like, dude,
Yeah.
I got a game
Well,
I
I
gotta
mean,
play. Like,
well, I know your new album's out today.
yeah,
Congratulations.
that's true. Thank you. Yeah, as of today, if you're listening to it early access on Patreon, it'll be live at midnight tonight. And if you're listening to it, on release day on Friday, it's out right now. If you guys didn't know, I am in a punk band called Long Friend Time Friend, and we just are putting out our second full-length album today. It's called Here's to Not Feeling Worse. And I'm really, really proud of it. It is like one of the biggest achievements I think I've had in my life as a creative person. So if you're interested in punk or rock music in general, right? If you like guitar bands, I would really appreciate it if you'd go and give it a listen wherever you get your music. And you can actually get the entire album for free. We're just giving it away. So I'll have a link down below where you can just go click through and download it if you're so inclined as well. So yeah, I hope you'll give it a listen. I'd really appreciate it. Thanks for bringing it up, Steve. I appreciate having the opportunity to plug it.
No. Well, I think we do a terrible job at plugging our stuff half the time. So we need to. And Sierra's in a band as well, and she never talks about it.
I
Unless
do
we're
a
just
much
like,
better
what are
job
you doing?
of teeing her up. I'm like, you got a thing out, talk about it, right? It's like, but I'm like, I don't want to. You came here to hear me talk about Steam Deck. I don't need to give you a commercial, but I am really, really proud of the work that we did, and it would mean a lot to me if you'd go and check it out. We've already had a really, really great reaction to the singles that came out, which I never talked about on this show. So there you go. I didn't talk about it for the last 3 months. I'm giving you a pitch today. So go give it a listen. That's Long Friend Time Friend, If Me Dot. Or no, that's the first one. Long Friend Time Friend, Here's to Not Feeling Worse. That's the album. Go check it out.
Mhm.
Oh, and while we're talking about it, go check out Sierra's band. What's the hell's ahead? They just put out a new single as well, and they got an album coming out in April. So go check it out. It's fucking really good. Okay, so Before we get into the top 100 games, because I definitely want to talk about that. I want to pull this question here we got from one of our Patreon producers, Voodoo Vic, who wrote in and said, "Are you guys satisfied with the Steam sales currently? I shed a little tear when I see Voodoo Vince for retail still." Love that you're like a diehard Voodoo Vince fan, Voodoo Vic. I think that is awesome. I had Voodoo Vince on the original Xbox because I was still deep in my 3D platforming era at that point, and I remember that game pretty fondly. You know, I don't know how it holds up today, but shout out to Voodoo Vince, everybody. Are you picking anything up? Like I said, I bought Balatro. It's not on sale, but I bought it.
Mm.
So that's all I'm getting.
See, at the moment, I've got no desire to pick anything up, but then I look at the sale and I'm like, oh, Horizon's 9.99. I could play Horizon Zero Dawn again and I'd have a good time. But then I'm thinking, by the time I've got through Balatro, then I know that Ghost of Tsushima's going to be out and I'm going to want to play that. So it's just like, oh,
Do you ever
maybe. But then,
snag games like that that you think you'll come back to later and you just get it while it's cheap? Because I do that sometimes,
then I
and
never get to it. I never ever get to it.
yeah, I
It
know.
just
That always
stays
ends up
there.
being the thing. It's
Yeah.
just in the library, and it's like another thing I just am scrolling past, you know, which is like kind of a
Yeah.
bummer.
I got to say that there's so many good things in this sale. Like you said, most of the top 100 Steam Deck games are in the sale. Tons of the big games from last year are in the sale. Baldur's Gate 3, I think, is on sale for the first time. It's
Yeah,
down
10% off.
10%. But you
Is
can
that
pick
its
up stuff
first
like
sale? No
I
way.
think it's
Really?
his first ever sale, yeah, apart from maybe the
Wow.
launch sale.
Cool.
But like Dave the Diver's on sale. You've got Diablo 4 on sale. Like some of the big games from last year are like they're having like big chunky discounts. But yeah, Horizon Zero Dawn, I don't know why. It was just like, oh, I don't want to play that one. But then I'm also wanting to check out Helldivers 2 because I know Max was raving about that.
Sure.
There's like there's just so many. And like I've always wanted to play Sekiro because I loved Elden Ring. Everyone tells me that Sekiro should be the one I play next because it's just like so different to any other FromSoft game. And I really got the itch to play like a FromSoft game. But then I'm like, but I also do have Elden Ring on PC that one of our Patreon producers, Zaylida, got for me. So I was just like, maybe I just play that instead, and I go through that ready for the DLC that's coming out. So the sales always get me. I'm always tempted by something, but I know if I end up buying something, I just won't play it right now.
I think what always bums me out is like I always look at these sales and there will be games like that that I'm like, "Oh yeah, like I would love to play that game again," or "Oh, I'd love to get around to this game." And it just like it makes it so easy to end up in one of those like your eyes are bigger than your stomach like type situations, right? Where it's like,
Yeah, definitely.
yeah, like I wanna play all these games, but it's like I only have so much time, right? And it's like you wanna play new stuff that's coming out so that you can, talk about it on the show and and all that kind of stuff. And it is a shame, right? Like I wish that I wish I had more time for, like chipping away at the back catalog and stuff like that. And I think that was like something that you and I talked about a lot in the last couple years when you had not I wouldn't say a period of drought, right? Like obviously last year like was absolutely stacked. Like 2020 was really
Yeah,
stacked, but
year before though, it was like a little bit of a quiet one, and I actually have been
you had
trying to just
quiet
chip away.
period is the
Yeah.
thing, right? It's not like there weren't big games, but it's not like last year where there were so many releases. It was just impossible to keep up with stuff that was even
Even
just
the
in
front
your
was
niche.
stacked, like, even the front of that year was stacked. This year, I feel like we haven't really had, like, a huge, big, massive release that I can think of, you
I
know?
mean, there's been a couple. I think it just depends on like your like. I mean, Yakuza came out in January, right? And then we just had Final
Yeah, it's nothing's
Fantasy.
like well, maybe Final Fantasy, yeah, that's fair. It's never on my radar because I don't like that franchise, but, yeah, that's totally valid.
But I think to your point, like last year, I think it felt like it was very nonstop, and like I think this year's already felt. I don't want to say quieter by comparison because I don't think it has been. Like I think when you look at like how many really like big indies have come out already too, like there's been games like we just talked about Balatro, like that was a really big success. Helldivers, not an indie game, right? But like I think kind of like a
Double
sleeper
A.
hit. Yeah, and like a sleeper hit, like not a game people expected to come out and light the world on fire like it did. Pal World had that moment earlier this year. Like I think there've already been a couple meaty games that shore up like if the rest of the year can maintain a similar momentum, you'll look back on this year as having lots of good releases. But like, I think coming off of last year, like anything's going to feel quieter because there were like, we talked about it a ton at the end of the year last year and the beginning of the year this year. There were so many releases last year that would have been a game of the year contender in any other year and just got edged out because there just wasn't space for
Oh,
them.
well, it's so many re-releases as well, you know? It's like, we had stuff like, The Last of Us that got re-released. We had, Dead Space that got re-released. We had Resident Evil 4 that got remade, you know? There were so many of those.
Metroid.
Uh, yeah, and I feel like maybe we're gonna have the continuation of that, of games coming to PC. We've got Ghost of Tsushima coming, seemingly Gran Turismo 7 is gonna be coming later this year. There's like probably a bunch of other ports that are gonna be coming. I wouldn't be surprised to see Final Fantasy announced for PC this year, whether it comes this year or comes next year. I could see it kind of getting announced
I
when
don't
it's coming.
I don't see it getting announced this year just because they just announced that they're working on 16 for PC, and I imagine they're gonna try to go for a stagger like that, where it's like, okay, 16 was out last year, that was the big game on console.
Mhm.
Now 7, Rebirth is the big game this year. 16 will come to PC, and then next year, after you've had about a year of exclusivity on PlayStation, it comes to PC after that. Maybe you announce it at the end of this year, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's a similar thing to what you saw with 16, where like when it came out, they were like, look, there's no plans for like PC anytime soon. Like it is coming to PC. We're going to work on it, but we're just starting working on it. It's not a thing that is like imminent. So if you want to play it, get it on PlayStation 5. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's kind of the party line until,
Yeah.
you know, it's kind of run its course as an exclusive, right, for the year. Because you got to
Oh,
think
man.
that's like seemingly the big game that Sony's going to hang their hat on this year is that like they have Final Fantasy 7 and that's the only place you can play it.
It's a good job. It's a good job. It's a good game because if they were hanging their hat on it and it wasn't, they're kind of in
Yeah.
hot water there. But I think they're probably going to ride the PC wave a little bit. You know, Helldivers has been a massive success for them on PC. It runs great on
Yeah.
Steam Deck. I think probably Ghost of Tsushima is going to
I
be a
think you're
great release on Steam Deck as well.
I think you're bang on. Like I wouldn't be surprised if we get, because what? It's like every year there's like you get maybe one of those games, right? One big PlayStation game comes to PC, maybe two in the last couple of years, right? I wouldn't be surprised if this year that number like doubles and it's like Ghost is out Q1, right? Because that's what May we said the
Hmm.
other day. Yeah, so that comes
So
out in May.
that start of Q2. So Helldivers Q1, Ghost
Sure.
Q2, probably got Q3,
Another game
Q4.
in the summer, another game in the fall, maybe another game around Christmas time. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case at all because I mean, if they don't have other big stuff to pitch on PS5, then it's like, yeah, right. Why not try to shore up those numbers, those software sales, right? By putting stuff out on this other platform where it's going to be a day one, big hit and it's going to sell as a brand new game. I mean, you look at this game, right? At the top 100 games on Steam Deck. I think every PlayStation release is on here, or almost everyone. Not the one that you like, the zombie one.
Yeah, it is. Days Gone's on here, isn't
Days
it?
Gone's on here. I didn't see it. Okay, maybe I just missed it.
I thought it was. I might be wrong. Yeah,
But
Days
either way,
Gone's there.
I mean, you're okay, cool. So then I think that's everyone, right? Because I mean, Spider-Man's on it, Miles is on it, Horizon's there, Helldivers
God of
2 is
War,
there, God of War, like we just said, Days Gone.
Uncharted.
Oh yeah, the Uncharted collection, right? So I
Is The
mean,
Last of Us on here? That might be the only one that's not.
yeah, which makes sense because it was terrible when it came out, right? So maybe
It's all right now. People should go play it if they want to play that game. It
probably
runs well.
just needs to like have a big sale or like have like the show come back and it'll have its moment. Like, it'll
Honestly, they should have just not released that game in the state they did. It was a
no,
massive, like,
such a mistake.
yeah, such a real faux pas on their part.
Yeah, it's a shame because it's like I was so excited to buy that on deck after watching that first season of just like having the nostalgia to play through it again. And it was such a shame that it was like, oh man, like it's just not worth it. My wife and I both wanted to buy a copy, and it's like, damn, like we just were like, forget it, right? We'll wait.
Mhm.
And then you wait long enough that the moment is kind of it's past.
Moment's gone. Yeah, it's no
Yeah.
longer kind of in the
Oh,
zeitgeist.
you know what? There's two other games that I guess aren't on the top 100 now that I'm thinking about it. Ratchet, right? And
Oh, yeah,
then
yeah. Returnal.
and Returnal. Those are both newer though too, right? So it's like, and granted,
Yeah,
there are like Helldivers and Palworld are brand new and they're on this list, so fair enough.
Returnal just doesn't run very well. Ratchet does, but Return I can understand why it's not there. We've also got Until Dawn coming to PC as well this year,
Yeah,
so
I
that's
forgot about
another
that one.
big PlayStation release that's coming.
That's gonna be
Um,
so cool to see that on PC and see that game like have another moment, you know, and like see people streaming it and stuff. And like that game is just so much fun.
it is, yeah. I think it's the best one that Supermassive have made.
I also hope that I agree. By the way, I sorry, side note, you said something that like gave me three different thoughts. Have you played their newest one?
The Quarry?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's great.
you played with your
It's like
dad,
a
right?
yeah, it's like a spiritual successor to Until Dawn. It's
I
great.
was
Yeah,
gonna say Until Dawn is still the best one, but the Quarry like really slaps. Like that game is, I
yeah,
think,
yeah. It's
low
great.
key very good. That's their second best for sure. I think.
Great actors in that one as well. Like,
And
just
just
really
like
great cast.
the story's really fun. Like it unfolds in a
Yeah,
really
yeah, yeah.
cool way. And it's like the way that you're kind of like from the beginning, you're like, I think this is what's happening. And then like when you have the moment of like you know, and you're like, they're very much like, yes, and it's like, oh, okay, like, whoa, you know? I don't know. Like Sarah is always really good at being like, this is what's about to happen. Like, this is what's happening, right? Is this what's gonna happen?
Yeah, I've
Um,
played it through 2 or 3 times, and something different happens every single time, and it's really
yeah.
fun. They do
And
such
like
a good job with that.
it swerves really well where like
Mhm.
they lay threads and it's not like oh, we're pulling the rug out from under you and it's not this, it's just like it goes deeper than you could have imagined, like type stuff that it's just really good. It's a really good game. um so yeah, I'm super stoked to see that one, and I hope that Until Dawn, this was the other pin that I wanted to say, I hope that that is a sign of a continuing trend, because I would like to see them bring more PS4 and like older games to PC. Like I think it would be cool to see them.
Well, it
Um,
is getting a remaster for PS5, which is probably why it's
yeah,
coming to PC at the
that's
same
true.
time, but I agree. I think they've got such a massive library that they can tap into. Bring them to PC and make them a little bit cheaper. Don't price them at the $60 price point, maybe do a $40 price point when you release it. You don't
Or
have
do
to
like
put all the effort
collections
into
even, right? Like if you want to
yeah.
make a $70 box, like give us like Resistance 1 through 3, you know, Infamous 1 through 3, like $70 as a collection, like the
Mhm.
Nathan Drake collection. That would be awesome. I would love to see some of those like underappreciated
Yeah, why
PS3.
don't we have the other, Uncharted collection? Like, we've only got the Lost Legacy collection.
Which is, like, really whack because it's like, if you've not played Uncharted, then you can't play through the whole thing on PC, and it's like,
Yeah,
it's just a bummer. Like, yeah, like, that's when I would love to see them bring over.
kinda wanna get that collection though. It's 20 quid at the moment. It's 50% off. And that is those are 2 great games, Uncharted 4 and
Phenomenal. I've
Lost
been wanting to
Legacy.
replay those for a minute too. I was thinking
Yeah.
about it myself. Do you wanna talk
And
about what
if you
else is
got
on this list? I mean, because there's a lot of fire here.
yeah, I mean, it's while I was checking out the top 100 games, I mean, some of them you kind of expect. I think most of them I expect. Baldur's Gate 3. So the list is in order of highest daily active player count between March of 2023 and March of 2024. So these are games that
And
the majority of people were playing for the last year.
I also think it's pretty interesting, because this was like one of the other stories that we floated about talking about this week, was that I think it was what they officially passed. Was it 1,800 or something like that? Deck verified games.
Wasn't it 18,000?
18,000. Oh, that's probably right. That's way higher. I'm like 1,800. That's not that much. Um, and you know,
14,000, by the way.
14,000. And we've talked a lot about how like what does that really mean? And the fact that there isn't kind of like a way for the community to be more involved in that, to be like, okay, actually it doesn't work though, and it's deck verified, or this isn't verified, but it works really well. And I thought it was interesting that in the top 100 they had it regardless of verified status or not. So there are several games on here that are not technically verified, but that run incredibly well on deck, right? And it's
Mhm.
just kind of funny to see that like to be able to look at this hard data of games that are most played by hours and have it be games that are advertised as, oh, we don't know if this runs. It's like I
Well,
feel
no,
like
there's
like
one that is actively marked as unplayable. that is in this list, and that is Grand Blue Fantasy Relink. It is marked as completely unplayable. But enough people have played this game on Steam Deck, so it clearly works, that it made it into the top 100. My guess is it requires Proton GE. I should probably check that actually on Proton DB to see why it's not playable. But that would be my guess, is that there's some tweaking that you need to do, or maybe it's just not gone through the kind of process again, because sometimes they just it's marked as platinum on Proton DB, so it runs flawlessly apparently. Works straight out of the box now, including online. So yeah, no problems with it at all. So it just needs retesting. But I think that's been part of the problem we spoke about before as well. It's like gets tested once and then it never gets tested again. And at launch at the Steam Deck, we had the issue where some games were marked as playable, like I think Horizon was one of them. But then you got further into the game and it started crashing and started being issues as the deeper you got into it, because the testers had clearly only played like an hour or two of the game, and the beginning area of the game is not that intensive on Horizon. But then as you kind of meet more and more of the robots, comes a little bit more choppy and a little bit more sluggish. I think they fixed that now.
You have like areas where there's like a more dense amount of machines
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And it's like, yeah, of course, right? Like that's going to take more to process.
Which was the same issue with The Last of Us, except The Last of Us was clearly more prevalent early on, but they put a little bit more polish into that opening section. As you got deeper and deeper into the game, it became more and more problematic. But obviously they put the work in to fix that. So I mean, kudos to Sony for fixing it, but it really should not be. Those games should not have been put out in the state that they were.
No, it's just a shame, because then it's just like I think The Last of Us would probably be near the top of this list if it had launched in a good state, right? But it has that reputation now of being shoddy, right? And like to your point, it runs fine now. And I think when we get a second season of the show, or if there's a big sale or something that like, it's like what happened with Red Dead 2, right? Where like when it got that update and it's like, oh, it works on Steam Deck now, and then it's like, okay, now it's one of the top 10 games on Steam Deck like every few months, right? Or whatever.
Yeah, well, it's firmly in the top 100. It's, I think it is number 10 on the list. So
there you go.
Just below Stardew Valley and GTA 5. So Rockstar's got 4 games on the list: GTA 5, Red Dead Redemption 2, GTA 4, and I think the 1, 2, and 3 trilogies on there as well.
Nice. Put Red Dead Redemption on PC already, guys. What are we doing? What are we doing?
They've got to be remaking that at this point, haven't they? You gotta imagine that's coming.
I don't know. Like you would think, right? It's like
because they did the Rockstar Presents the remaster on PS5, but we never got like a full remake. Wouldn't you just, because it's such a small part of the map in Red Dead 2, wouldn't you just like put it in that engine and kind of, I don't know, maybe they're too busy with GTA 6, but I thought they had 2 teams. So
yeah. Well, it sucks because like they outsourced like the remake of 3, Vice City and San Andreas, and like that was obviously like not very good. It's just like it's so annoying that like there's not that effort to keep the back catalog active like that, because especially for Red Dead, where it's like Red Dead Redemption 2 like is a prequel, and like there's so much story that like tease up things in Red Dead, and it's like it's so lame that you can't get the totality of that experience. And like I don't know, that's just a bummer. I'd love a good remake of that one. But yeah, like you said, I mean, I think there's a lot of the other like usual suspects, right? Like it's like obviously like Vampire Survivors and like Stardew Valley and Hades and Potato and Skyrim and Witcher 3 and Cult of the Lamb and Binding of Isaac. A lot of these games that have like been on the list and have stuck around.
Yeah, there's no surprises here for me. I don't think I wasn't shocked to see anything on here that I hadn't kind of thought would be here, or seeing anything missing. Really,
I was surprised to see Balatro on this list already, because I know it's popular and it sold a shitload of copies and everything, but like you said, this is by playtime, and it's like it's high on the list. Like it's like in the top 50. Which means that
it's not playtime; it's daily active player count.
Okay, daily active players.
Because this was such a hot game in the same way that Power World was, so many people jumped on it, and so it does make sense. Everyone was talking about Balatro. They sold like, wasn't it half and
it was 500,000 in the first week. Yeah, which is
so it's like
awesome.
It's a lot of copies sold of this game, and I would imagine the majority of them are on PC.
Yeah, yeah, right.
I can't believe how good that game is, though. It's like an 80 megabyte game. So even if you don't have much space on your Steam Deck, you can just install this thing. It's just phenomenal. I was talking to someone from work about it, and he was like, "Oh, I finally tried Balatro." He was like, "I got ridiculously far in my second run." And I was like, "How?" He's like, "I just have got really lucky with the Jokers, like just really, really lucky with them." I was like, I got through to like a 10 ante. I was like, "Oh my god."
Whoa. One other one I definitely want to call out is not the cheapest we've seen it, but Mass Effect Legendary Edition down to $9. So
You know one that's not on the list that I was, like, really actually considering getting? Jedi Fallen Order 350. £3 50.
it's so good. It's such a good game. It runs
I
real well
know.
on deck too if you play with it a little bit.
I can imagine, yeah, probably runs pretty well.
Yeah, that's definitely a good one, I would say too. So yeah, go check this
Yeah.
one out. You know, I think it's like it's a fun thing. Like I always like the data driven stuff, like getting to just see like what people's habits are and everything. I always think it's fun that, you know, Valve goes through the trouble of like sharing what the top games are month to month and everything.
Mhm.
So I before we move off this though, Steve, I do want to ask a question. We're gonna pull this one from the Steam docket. Or you know what? You know what? We'll jump into the Steam docket after this. I'll tell you first that this episode of the Steam Deck podcast is brought to you by our Patreon producers for the month of March. They are, of course, Arnold J. Rimmer, Christopher Valenz, Gabriel Hasselmeyer, aka Asobi, Snackago, Steve Stompy, Susan Loves Cats and also Boobies, Ty the Dude, Voodoo Vic, and Waka Hula. Thank you all so much for your support over on patreon.com/flipscreengames. Y'all the reals to the real, and we greatly appreciate your support of this and all of our sister shows. Remember, if you want to go above and beyond and show your support just like they did, if you want to write into the Steam docket and get your thoughts on this or any other episode of the show read, write in with a main topic or a question of your own, or just drop a line and say, hey, tell us that you enjoy the show. You can do all that and much more by heading over to flipscreen.games. That's our website where you can find links to all the places you can get involved, including our Discord, where you can keep the conversation rolling between episodes and be part of a growing community, a fun, inclusive community of Steam Deck nerds just like you. It is a great place to get advice and help, and we got lots of really nice, helpful people in that chat all the time. So if you need somebody to gab with about your Steam Deck, make sure you come over there and join us because it's a great time and a fun place to hang out. So I want to jump into this question, Steve, that came from our dear co-host, Mr. Max Wright, who is unfortunately not with us today because his internet is.
You literally just made it out like he died. That is what people say when they died. He's unfortunately not with us today. Like
I said today, not anymore. He's still alive. Don't worry. But his internet's out. And they were like, yeah, I don't know. We'll come fix it in a week. So
this is
hopefully
the
he's
day
back.
after the man fried his fucking motherboard because he put a new graphics card in and just ripped off some capacitors off his motherboard. So he's
Yeah.
not had a great week when it comes to technology.
So make sure you go send him some love. He needs it this week. But he wrote in with a question and said, what are your guys' top 3 must-own Steam Deck games? My friend Ryan has just got his deck, and I was trying to suggest games to play on it that would make it feel unique to his PC. I've been playing Balatro, Deep Rock Galactic Survivors, and they feel really at home on a handheld along with Vampire Survivors. So I think this is a fun question in the context of this top 100 list because I think a lot of our probably must play games or games that you'd want to consider are probably on this list. And if they're not, then we can make sure that they get a shout out. So what do you think are the games that if you got a friend who's getting a deck, what are the games you're telling them to pick up?
So these are games, I think, for the spirit of Max's question, is you've already got a PC, you're playing your big chunky AAA, maybe your first person shooters over there.
Mhm.
And these are games that feel better on a handheld. And I think those are traditionally the indie games that I would have said, you know what, you want to play those on Switch. But thankfully, we've got the ability to play them on PC now because there's a ton of games that come to PC before they come anywhere else. I think for me, Balatro is number one at the moment. It's fresh on my mind. Everyone's talking about it. It runs so well. It's
The
such
new
a wonderful
hotness.
little game, and it has been the perfect TV game, Pete. Like we talk about TV game on our podcast. Those are like the kind of games you play while you're watching, maybe a comfort show in the background. And Balatro, because there's not anything always going on, you can just have your TV on in the background, look at your current hand. I think that always is really great. I think something like Hades and Dredge and games like that are also just really, really
Hades
great.
was one I was
Dredge,
gonna say, yeah. Like,
yeah,
I feel that way about Cult of the Lamb for me too. I know that one didn't speak to
mhm,
you as much, but that was a game I really enjoyed when it came out, and it's another one that's very high on this list because I think it's just right at home on deck, and it runs really well, and it's like a perfect dip in, dip out kind of game, right? Like I think the best games on deck are ones that you can either play for 30 minutes or 30 hours, right? Like that's the vibe
mm,
you kind of want, right? And yeah, I think I'm inclined to agree that it is generally like the indies that I think are most at home. But I will say, I think that there are certain bigger games that do really lend themselves to the deck. And like one of the ones that comes to mind for me is Persona 5 Royal. I think that's probably the best place to play it because you can kind of enjoy the higher resolution that you would enjoy on like a PlayStation or something like that, or your home PC. But you can also enjoy like the kind of arguably, I guess, right? But historically, Persona franchise does really have like that kind of legacy of being on handheld. And they are right at home there. And like they're big, meaty games that, take a long time to knock out. So being able to like chip away for like 30 minutes at the end of the day on your deck, or, like sitting down for a longer session on a plane or something like that. I do think those games are like right at home, like Persona 5 Royal and Rebirth are specifically the two that I've played. And they're both great there. So I think that's the other kind of like extreme I think that you could go for is like you had that experience with Days Gone, right? Where it's like you might not sit and chip away at that like big open world checkboxy game during your dedicated TV time, like when you're sitting and wanting to play a game and engage with it. But like, when your partner's on the TV or whatever, and you just kind of want to enjoy a gameplay loop, like sometimes that can be a really, really good fit. So I guess that's where your taste kind of comes into it. Like if you're somebody who generally gravitates towards that kind of game, then I think that's kind of the advantage of playing them on deck versus on a console or on your PC.
mhm. I will say I've played, big chunky games on there. Obviously, I've played The Last of Us I've spoken about. I played through a bunch of the Resident Evil games. I also would probably put Forza Horizon on my list as well. I think
Mhm.
it runs great and it's the perfect game to just kill time and just mess around. And if you love car games or racing games, it's probably the best, I think. So I'd probably shove that on my list as well. But yeah, good question. It's a shame Max wasn't here to answer it with us, but yeah, it's a good question.
He's in our thoughts.
Mhm.
Swear he's not dead. Anyway, let's jump into another question. All right, all right, all right. Let's see. Which one you want to do, Steve? You pick the next one.
Oh, it's a tough one. I actually want to talk about Mark Fox's question. What's your view on using the Cheat Deck plugin to play super tough games like Elden Ring, and how well do game makers give accessibility options? I actually looked at the Cheat Deck plugin the other day because um, I want to add a bunch of content to Stardew Valley. There's like this like Stardew Valley extended, but you can like launch a bunch of cheats. Now, I will say people that
Oh, sorry.
cheat.
Wait, is Stardew Valley extended like a fan thing, and you
Yeah,
need
yeah,
to
adds a
do that?
shitload of content and, like, you need to, like, run it, beforehand, and Cheat Deck is, like, an easy way to kind of, boot up these cheats before you kind of get there. You can do it with the example that they've got on their GitHub page is Hollow Knight. I will say, if you use cheats in multiplayer games, you're an asshole, so don't do it. However, I if you need a cheat or you wanna cheat or you wanna make a game easier or more difficult for yourself or you wanna change the way it functions, go ahead if it's a single player game and
Yeah.
that's how you wanna play. Like, I've got no I think games should be played how people wanna play the games, and games that don't have accessibility options, I'm looking at Nintendo for the most part, it's there's just no kind of answer to that for me.
No, yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, I think when it comes to this kind of thing, like Mark, you say like what's your view on using it specifically for like super tough games? I'm with you, Steve, where like I don't think it matters at all. I I think that attitude is like one of my least favorite things about the culture of video games. And I get it because games are inherently competitive, right? Like when you play games in a competitive way, like there is that sense of like I want to beat you and I want to come out on top and I want to be the best. And like, there's fun in that, right? Like, I think there's a sportsman-like way to do that. But I think once you get into this attitude of like when people are like, kind of like having these like digital dick measuring contests about like, oh, like you played Elden Ring with magic, then you didn't really play the game. Like you didn't really beat it because you cheated and made a thing to make it easier. And it's just like, okay, like so what? Like to me, it's like what other like genre art form, right? Is like that where it's like, like
You
oh,
should read a book with a tiny font because otherwise you're a wimp.
it's too
'Cause,
easy.
yeah.
Yeah, right. Or it's like if I was like, oh, like if Steve, like if you were like, oh yeah, like I really like the Lord of the Rings movies, and I'm like, oh, but like if you watch the extended editions and you're like, no, I've only seen the theatrical cuts. I'm like, oh, fucking fake fan. Cool. Guess you're a casual. It's like it's like, what the fuck? It's
I
like
think Blade Runner is probably the perfect example of that. I've seen all the
sure. Yeah. Yeah, fair
cuts.
enough. And there are, I guess, that kind of person, right? With certain things, but I guess whatever. But like it's okay if you're bad at video games. Like straight up, like it's okay. Like you don't need to be good at games to enjoy them. Or even if like you are good and you just don't want to bang your fucking head against the wall and you're like, I'm done with this boss and I want to just beat it and move on. Like
Yeah, you did
whatever.
that in Star Wars, right? You bumped down the difficulty and made it a little bit easier for yourself because you just wanted to finish the
Uh-huh.
game.
Because I was like, because I fucked myself. I was playing Jedi and I didn't get enough of there's like 10 of this collectible you can find that extends your ability to get like stim packs and reheal. And I had like 3 of them. And I didn't realize there was 10 until I was like getting my ass handed to me by the final boss for like 2 consecutive nights after struggling with no bosses before that. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, cannot beat this. And then I figured out I would have to go back. I was like, forget it. I'll drop it down, roll credits. I'm done, And it's just like, I don't have anything to prove, right? Like I could have sat there and smacked my head against the wall and beat it eventually, but like then I would have had less fun. And the point of playing a game is to have fun. So I don't think that's controversial at all, right? Like if you want to use cheats, that's fine. I do with the caveat of if you use it in a competitive online game, you're a scumbag, straight up. And if you listen to this and you do that and I just called you a scumbag, well, fuck around and find out. It's shitty behavior.
It's the worst, honestly. No, I have it,
You're
and
just making
even
it not fun for other people. You're
yeah,
you're
even
you're
games
having
that
fun at
have
other people's expense, and that's not cool.
yeah, even games that have anti-cheat, so they're not perfect. And anti-cheat itself really pisses me off as well because I'll be in a game and it thinks I'm cheating and I'm not, and then I get kicked and I get booted and I'm just like, why? It's usually easy anti-cheat. You can't even get into a game because it's not validated or verified or something. It's just the fact that we even have to have that because people cheat and you use cheats in a
Yeah, if people would just, like,
auto
be
shoot and
cool
stuff.
about it, then it would not be a problem, right? And
Yeah.
we could all enjoy, you know, not having to jump through these hoops.
I mean, we could say that about a lot of things in life, there's speed
Yeah.
limits on the road for a reason because someone decided to drive at like 200 miles an hour down
Yeah,
the
it
motorway.
sucks. It genuinely does that people are not more, I don't know, like, community minded with stuff like this of, like,
Mhm.
maybe making other people's lives worse is not worth it. It's like we're all just trying to have fun here. And like to me, like that's where it comes down to. And I think like to answer the second question of like how well do game makers give accessibility options? I mean, it depends on who you're talking about. I think I would say there's been a trend over the last like 5-ish years of like accessibility being a major talking point in
Mhm.
development. And I think altruistically, there being developers and people that care about making games more accessible so more people can enjoy the art form. And then, business wise, I think companies realizing that disabled people like to play video games too, and that they will buy them if they are able to play them, and that the amount of effort it takes to open up the game to a lot more people is really not that significant. If you dedicate time and energy to it, right? Because it's like you look at like what PlayStation's been doing, right? And like the tools that they debuted in The Last of Us Part 2 are now like in every game that they put out. And it's like that's something that like you can see that there's been resources shared among their studios, right? And that like the work that was done on Last of Us Part 2 benefited players in Ratchet and Clank and God of War and all these other games, right? So it's like, I think, Xbox on the hardware side with their custom controller is like a huge W, and on the
Hmm.
software side with PlayStation, I think is a huge W. Xbox too, I guess in some ways, like they had the ASL, the American Sign Language uh mode in the Forza games. Like that's
Oh
like a
yeah, yeah, yeah.
really that's a huge innovation, right? Software side. That's really cool. And like I've seen that starting to become a trend in like other things. Like I think on it was on HBO Max, one of those, right? I saw a movie where they had that as like an option, and it was like in the bottom right corner, you had an interpreter translating things, and it's like it's cool to see those things, right? So it's like I think it's good to look at the people that are doing it right and pat them on the back and be like, this is what we should all be striving for. Like I think a small change I've noticed is that there are a lot of games that ship and the default option is that there's a text reader on and then you can turn it off. Right. And it's like, that's great, right? Because if I'm an able-bodied gamer, it takes me one button press to turn that off and it's a prompt. It's like, do you need this? No, great, move on. But for the other person, it's like they couldn't even boot up the game if they don't have somebody there to open it and turn that on. And like that sucks. So it's like it's getting a lot better, and we still have a way to go. Like you called out Nintendo, they're abysmal, right? I would argue the same thing about From Software, and like there's such a this culture of like it can't have difficulty modes and this and that because that's not the spirit of the game, and it's like that makes it totally unplayable for certain types of people, and that's not I don't like that. And I don't think that they're like wrong, I guess. Like if that's your artistic vision and you want to class people out of playing your game because like that's the goal, then like okay, but I think that kind of sucks, frankly. Like I think we look at like I think even classifying things as like easy, normal, hard, like
Yeah,
is not
I think
great because it
I
it
think
it puts this
Celeste
like yeah, go ahead.
I think Celeste did it right. It's like this is the base level, this is what we want it to be. But if you want to, you can turn on these things that make the game a little bit easier or more accessible to you. And we'll explain what each of these things do and why we think you probably shouldn't turn them on and you should get good at the game and like learn the skills to kind of
Or
play
like
it. But
how
if
you
you're
can use it as a tool to get better, right? Where it's like you
yes.
can use it as a safety net while you're learning so that you don't get frustrated and then you can turn it off when you're more comfortable and, you know, not
I think
penalizing you for doing that.
yeah, I think that's the best approach that I've seen in any game, and I'd love to see more games adopt that. The specific case that Mark Fox calls out about Elden Ring, I think is a valid one. A lot of people struggled with the difficulty of that game, and if it was your first ever Souls game, like it was for me, the learning curve was huge. We had 1 week where I was like, I don't get this game. I think it's awful on the podcast. And the next week it clicked, and I was like, I get it. It's a rhythm game. Like I'm going like beat to beat and parrying and like making sure that I'm kind of getting the hits in and rolling around the place. But there's so many things in that game specifically that you just have to learn that it's not explained to you. Like I don't know what the classes mean because I've never played a Souls game before. So I just picked one that I thought looked nice. And it turned out it wasn't my play style, but I wasn't to know that. And then it's if I want to re-roll the character, it's either really costly and late in the game, or I just got to start again and it's all that progress that's lost. So I think being able to use a plugin to help you kind of get through a game if the developer's not willing to put the time or effort into it, or if it's an old game, right? That developers aren't going to go back to something that came out 10, 15 years ago, and you want to either add content to it or use cheats in order to get through it, then why not? I've got I don't see any issue with it at all.
No. Yeah. I don't think it's like a moral issue unless you're using it to grief other people, right? Which is
Hmm.
just a totally different thing. And I think at that point, like, you know, I think that's an obvious line in the sand for most people, right? For anyone who doesn't do it. All right, so I want to close things out on a question from Team Linux, who wrote in on the Discord and said, "What kind of games are you willing to buy at full price, $70 for console equivalent? And when are you willing to buy at full price and season pass at the same time, $100 plus at purchase?" I think this is an
So,
interesting question because we've been talking about this a lot with kind of like the uh like companies needing to experiment a little bit more with price range, right? And this idea that like there probably are, certain types of big blockbuster games, right? That like do need to cost $70 because of the amount of effort and everything that goes into them. And that there are a lot of other games that probably don't and still get away with charging that amount because that's what we've decided games cost now, right? And you have these examples of stuff like, the remakes that Activision did that were like $40 during the $60 period. You have stuff like Helldivers and like Power World and stuff coming out at like a more mid-range double A kind of price and doing really well and connecting with people. Obviously, now we've got free to play. We've got indies that are at all these different price points. Like we are seeing a lot of experimentation overall, but like we're still kind of locked in on the whole like new boxed copied games all cost like an amount. This is what they cost, right? With very little variance. And
Apart from on Steam, which is the weird thing. I can
right.
only really think of one game that's £70 or $70, and that's Final Fantasy on Steam.
Some of the other newer games that are AAA stuff have been $70. Like I'm pretty sure Yakuza was $70 on Steam, wasn't it?
I'm not sure. I'll check that. You mean like a Dragon?
And well, the new one's not Like a Dragon, right? Because Like a Dragon was the last new one. I think there's
They're
the
they're
one.
all Like a Dragon now. Like a
Oh,
Dragon
right.
Infinite
What's the
Wealth
new?
came
Yeah,
out.
what's the new one called though? The one that just came out in January.
Infinite Wealth, that was
Yeah.
59.99 in the UK, so it might be 69. No, it's going to be 59.99 everywhere. The deluxe edition 75. So I can only think of one game that's 70. I did buy. There's one game I bought that cost £70, and I will never buy another game at £70 because I just think it's way too much. It's like the straw that broke the camel's back for me is £10 too much. And that was Diablo 4, and I only bought it for that price because I wanted early access because I was really excited for it. And you could
The
get into the
new
beta.
the new Wild Monster Hunter, right? Or no, Wild Hearts. Wild Hearts was 70 at launch as well. Jedi Survivor looks like it was. So
Yeah, the
it's
thing
happening.
is with these games, though, it's like I know they're going to be on sale, and I know they're going to be significantly cheaper. So unless I'm super hyped for the game, or it's a franchise I fucking love, like Diablo, there's no chance I'm going to buy it for £70 at launch. It's just not going to happen. And in the UK, we're quite lucky that on console we could buy physical versions for a lot cheaper. I know that's not the case in America,
Yeah.
but on PC you don't really have that choice. You could go through a key reseller. Sometimes they're a little bit
Or you wait for a
shady, but
sale because sales happen all the time, right?
yeah, or you wait for a sale. And I think for me, like I can't imagine spending £100 on a game at launch. I
Like
just can't.
ever?
No.
Because I don't know. I think it depends. Like I don't know. Like I can't think of an example to my mind right now, right? But I don't know. We've talked about that with like I think there needing to be like a conversation about like how much
I mean, we
content a
literally
game
spoke
has to
about this on
offer.
Flip Screen Games, I think, last week. It was just
Yeah,
like I can see it's being sustainable for one of those games a year. Like
right, right.
people will justify paying
Like I think
70 or £100 once a year because it's a luxury, but you're not going to do that for every single release. And I think it's going to get to the point where the market struggles, and it's just like, well, we've got all these £70 games coming out at any given time.
yeah.
No one's buying it. And they're buying the biggest one.
I mean, I guess it depends, right? Because it's like taste is like a big thing with that, right? Like I think there's some games that like like they're gonna be a blockbuster, right? Like they're gonna come out and sell like hotcakes, and it is what it is, right?
Yeah, I mean, GTA 6, for example, they could price
Sure.
that probably at 80 or 90 or 100, and people will buy it because they've been
Mhm.
waiting for it for, 15
Yeah,
years at that
maybe
point.
I don't know. Because I guess the interesting question becomes is like, where is that line worth drawing? Because it's like the thing with the $70 games, right? Is like you might price a certain number of people out of buying it day one, but the margin of profit increase from the people that do buy it, like kind of covers that. And then the people that buy it, I'll wait for a sale. And then you buy it at £60 like a few weeks later. And then you spend what you feel comfortable with. And it's like you hit that kind of like, where does it make sense? And I look at like games like The Witcher 3, for example, which has like two full campaigns that are free, right? With the Blood and Wine and the other like I think you could make the argument that that game is worth $100 in terms of like what's there and how much time you could spend with it.
Maybe, but
But
why not give the customer the choice of I'll pay £50, and then if I want those 2 expansions and I like
right.
the game, I'll
But
pay
but
20 quid for them.
I mean that's what Team Linux is saying though, right? Like when are you willing to buy full price and a season pass at the same time,
Oh,
which would be
I'll never buy a season pass at the same time. I need to know that I'm gonna enjoy the game. Most of the time, I don't buy DLC, I never really go back to it. The only time I buy a season pass is if I'm big into a multiplayer game, like I did for
right.
Deceive Inc. last year, but every
And
single game I've
that's
bought,
usually
like
like because the game is free. So you're like,
yeah.
okay, like I want to support it. I want to get in the
Mhm.
the flow of it, right? Like, yeah, and to me that's different. So that's I guess the question, right? Is like when would you be willing to pay full price and season pass at the same time? Like probably never because I don't have the guarantee that I'm going to engage with that content.
How many times have you been burnt? Imagine if you bought Starfield and you were really hyped for it, you bought into the dream, you listened to Todd, he sold you on the game, you're like, "Oh, I fucking loved Skyrim and Fallout and all of that stuff, so I know that I'm gonna love Starfield." And then you get the game, and, like, the majority of the consensus, you're just like, "It's a bit boring." I liked it, you liked it, but most people were just like, "It's not great." You're stuck then.
Yeah.
You've invested in the season pass. The DLC is still not even out, and it's like, are you really gonna go back to a game that you thought was mid at
Right,
best?
exactly. That's why like I don't do that, right? But like I don't know. I guess I'm not like out on the idea of it. Like I don't think that it's like that could never make sense. I guess it's just depending on like what you're talking about. Cause it's just like, I don't know, like maybe we do get to a point where that like as a model makes sense in some capacity where it's rather than trying to get you to buy it's $70 up front and then we need you to buy a season like every couple whatever. It's like it's $100 and that's all you ever and we, and that I don't know. But I do think that sounds crazy, right? To be like you're gonna spend that much on one piece of software. But like to me, like I think it's interesting that that $70 is like such a line in the sand for you. Because to me, I just don't look at it that way because like I look at how every other like form of entertainment has gone up in price. And I think video games are
Yeah,
still
there's been a lot of lines drawn in the sand for me there too. You know, I'm not going to subscribe to Netflix because they put the price up. I'm not going to subscribe to Netflix and Amazon and Disney and
right.
Paramount and Now TV and all of these others. It's too much. And I think when everything is kind of vying for your attention, I'm buying Balatro for 12 quid, and I'm having such a great time with it. Probably a better time than I've had with games that I have spent £60 on.
Mhm.
And it's really gotta be a game that I know I'm gonna sink a lot of time into, and I've been anticipating for a long time, or as a part of a franchise that I know I'm gonna enjoy. I'm less willing to take a risk on something that's completely new IP. Zelda, for example, I'll pay £60 or 70, maybe I'll pay £70 for that because Breath of the Wild is phenomenal and I want to play Tears of the Kingdom and we've been waiting for it for 7 years. I'm willing to kind of pay that, but it's going to be very rare that I'm willing to pay it for the majority of games. I can't see it.
And I think I'm inclined to agree with that. I think that is where that price point I don't want to say has priced me out, but I think last generation I was more willing to roll the dice on a game and be like, we'll see if this is for me. And if it's not, whatever. Right. Whereas like I think it's kind of multifaceted though, where I think part of it is $70 is a higher price of entry to roll the dice on something, but it's also like there's more good games out now than there used to be, right? So it's like I remember when Monster Hunter World came out, right? For example, I spent $60 on that because all my friends were playing it and I wanted to play something new. And it was like, this isn't really my kind of thing, but like maybe I'll get into it. So like let's give it a shot, right? Whereas like I wouldn't do that now, right? Because I don't want to piss away $70 on a game that I don't think I'll play. But you know, I also feel like that's just like such a rare thing for me anyway. Like more often than not, I know what games I want to buy. Like right, like I didn't feel any kind of way about spending $70 on Spider-Man 2 last year, right? Like that was an easy decision for me. I got my money's worth out of that game. I really enjoyed it. I'm not upset that I bought it at launch and enjoyed it at that price, right? I'm feeling that way about, like Final Fantasy, right? Where it was like, oh, I was excited for this. I'm excited to get into it and be a part of it while it's happening, right? But also like I'm not as into that game as I was Spider-Man. So like if I had not bought it at launch and waited a couple months and got it for like $10 cheaper, like that might have been fine too. And I think that's where like you got to have that calculus with yourself, right? Where it's like, is that $10, that extra $10 as you're going to perceive it, right? Worth an extra couple weeks with the game or something like that, right? And it's like that's I guess the way that, you know, I'm
I think
thinking
for
about it.
me, it would be I'm not playing anything else. I'm really hyped and excited for it, or a multiplayer game that I know all my friends are getting in on early, and
And
so
if
I
you're
want to be
late to the
part of that.
party, then
Yeah.
you might miss the wave and you never get into it.
So maybe there are times, like I said, the only game I've ever paid £70 for was Diablo, and that was to get into the private beta. So that was a pre-order.
Yeah.
It was a £70 pre-order.
Yeah, I guess it's just like it's also a tough thing because when you and I are talking about it, we're talking about two different realities, right? Like $70 for me is different than $70 for you because of the way that like our dollars are worth different amounts
Yeah,
in
£70
in
is $89 if you do a currency conversion.
right. And to me, like that is that's a way different question then of like, would you spend $90 on a new game? And I'm like, oh, probably not, right? Like that seems like I wouldn't have wanted to spend $90 on Spider-Man 2 at launch, but it's like 70 for me is like, well, that was literally $10, right? That was a $10 increase. And video games have been at that price for how long? So it's like, like, do I wish that they didn't go up? Yeah, but it's like
Which,
movies
yeah,
cost more than they used to. Streaming costs more than it used to, right? Like everything
everything
does.
costs more. I get that. Yeah, but 70 USD in pounds at the moment is £54. 50, 55, £60. That's about what I expect to pay for a game.
Mhm.
$90,
Is yeah,
£70. That's a lot of money. It's really, it's like it's hard to justify that when you've also got to weigh up. Well, do I want to pay for Spotify or YouTube
sure.
Premium or whatever else that I'm paying for? You kind of have to. I think a lot of people are looking at their
Well,
finance and just
and
assessing like, where's my money best spent?
and I think to your point, like I think part of that is also just like you have to buy games that are actually worth that money for you. Because I think like how many of us buy a game because of FOMO and then you don't finish it, and then it's like, well, then it really wasn't worth the money. But like I spent $70 on I mean, I brought up Spider-Man, right? Let's use that as an example. Say that game took I mean, I platinumed it, so it probably took me like 30 hours. If we say 25, right? That means I was like it was an average of what? What's 70 divided by 25? Because 75 would be 3. So let's say 75 with tax, right? $3 an hour? That's great. What other form of entertainment can you get for $3 an hour that's that enjoyable? None,
Mhm.
right? Like I would spend $20 to go see a movie. Like that's 2 hours. And I
Yeah.
would and
No,
is it that enjoy
I do. Yeah,
and
I do
and
get
and
the argument. I do.
and then again, right? Like to bring it back, I played Final Fantasy 16 last year. I spent 60 plus hours in that game. So wow, I spent like $1 an hour. That's not bad. Like
Mhm.
like I'm not sitting here saying that if you are in a financial position or like just you're frugal and you're like I don't want to spend that much. That's not what I'm arguing. But I think like the argument that games cost too much is not fair because it's
That's not the
literally
question though. Like the question is
is
like, are
when
you
are you
willing to
willing?
buy it? Yeah,
Exactly.
and it's very rare for me. Like I will, but it's got to
You
be
gotta
a
know that you're
sure
gonna get your
thing.
money's worth.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that's the thing is, like, you're also
and
that kind of person a lot where you'll get a game and you'll be like, "Yeah, I fuck with this," and I play 20 hours and then I'm kinda good, right? And it's like
yeah. But then I've also been burnt. I bought The Last of Us. It fucking sucked at launch, and like I'm left spending all that money. Couldn't get a refund
no.
because it spent 2 hours compiling the shaders, and then like I'm stuck, and I spent that money. So I'll wait for reviews for games now as well. Which as an outlet that's now doing reviews is pretty annoying that we've got to
Be
wait
tough.
for reviews in order to check that we're gonna kind of buy the game to do a review on it. So yeah, but yeah, interesting question. That was a fun one.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good one. Thank you for writing in, Team Linux. It's great to hear from you. And yeah, and I think it's a question that like I'm very interested to see how the conversation evolves over the next couple of years as like this ongoing conversation of like, are we spending too much to develop AAA games continues? Because like I wonder, are we going to see a push for more games at that price and accept that they're not going to sell day one and games have longer sales cycles now and all these other conversations that you and I have been having of like how games seem to stick around for longer and all that kind of stuff that like kind of bucks that conventional wisdom and like will that change what games cost? Will that influence purchasing habits and marketing habits
Yeah,
and all this
yeah.
stuff? And like we're seeing all these games get re-released because there's, they're
Yeah,
cheaper
but
to.
then you have the other side of things where it's like Helldivers 2 comes out, it's a multiplayer title at a much cheaper price point, and everyone jumps on it because 1 is a good game, and 2, it's like, well, I'll give it a go. It's cheaper.
It's
Yeah,
affordable. Yeah, it's like that would have been a
yeah.
cheap game last generation, let alone this generation. It's almost half the price of.
So I really hope that the publishers look at that and look at the success of some of the smaller titles and just go, you know what, maybe we just need to
What if
invest a
that's the
little bit
next
more
trend
time
that we
into
all
it.
chase
Yeah,
instead of trying to make live service games?
yeah,
We try to make $40 games. Like that would be
yeah.
pretty good, huh? What if we do that? Hmm, We'll see. We'll see. It's interesting because I know that there's also kind of a divergence right now in the fact that like gamers our age want a different type of video game than gamers of the younger generation, right? And that like those interests are diverged in a way and that like we have different habits and different buying patterns and all that kind of stuff and that like you're going to I guess see like a shift, right? Where it's like
Mhm,
either I mean, I guess either those kinds of the games that those gamers want become unsustainable and they go away and they move on from the hobby, or you see more of these kinds of games start getting put in front of people and like we have to have, I guess more like catering to those audiences of like having smaller experiences that are cheaper and take less time and speak to people that want something that they can engage with and walk away from. And then the huge, massive, never ending stuff that lives on microtransactions. And like there just will be fewer of those games and that there'll be behemoths like Fortnite, right? And have like multiple games within them and all this stuff to like keep the ecosystem healthy. And I don't know. I hope so. It's an interesting question. It's one I think we're probably going to keep talking about over the next couple of years, just because I think the market is going to force there to be evolution in how we
yeah,
engage.
yeah, definitely. Yeah,
We'll leave it there for today. Thank you guys for joining us here on another episode of the Steam Deck Podcast. Remember, if you want to get involved, show your support. If you want to write into the show, if you want to go check out some of our sister shows, if you want to go join the Discord, keep the conversation rolling. However you choose to get involved, head over to flipscreen.games. That's the website. Go click on some stuff. Help us out. However you choose to get involved, it really does help the show and helps get us in front of new listeners, helps, keep the Steam Deck train rolling. So thank you for being a part of it. Thanks for tuning into another episode of the show. For the crew, I've been Pete. He's been Steve. We'll see you next week.